Hello, hello, hello. Hi, welcome. I am Sylvia Hayes, and you are watching Good News at Primetime. Today, our topic is Hidden and Unspoken History. Hidden and Unspoken History. As you know, there's a lot of people who don't want to teach or don't want Black people to learn their history. And in Florida, the governor is saying, no, you cannot teach Black history. And what a lot of teachers don't understand or don't know about is in 1994, I believe it was, they made a rule that Black history has to be taught in Florida. But the governor is saying no, you can't do that. My thing is, what are they afraid of? If they're supposed to be so superior, wouldn't you think that they think that Black history is not as important? Or I don't know where he says it's not important anyway, but why wouldn't he want us to know our history and our culture? We were brought here. We shouldn't have to just consume westernized culture. That's what I said, westernized culture. We shouldn't have to be forced to do that. A lot of stuff has been forced on us. The religion has been forced on us. A lot of the culture has been forced upon us. Why do we have to learn their culture and their history and not learn ours? So it is important. So today we're going to dive into the hidden and untold stories of Black history, because as you know, there's a lot of stories that have not been told. There's a lot of history that is just buried in the ground. Just to give you an example, the Statue of Liberty. Did you know the Statue of Liberty was based on a slave woman? Yep. The guy, I forgot his name. It's been so long since I even read the story, but he designed that statue based on his mom. It had chains on around the feet, and might still have chains to think about it. But his mom was a slave, okay, and the statue was designed around her, based on her, and the French thought it would be offensive to Americans, and he had to change the design. So, but in any case, it was a Black man who created the Statue of Liberty. Just to give you an example, they're not going to tell you about that. They're going to say the French gave the Statue of Liberty to the Americans for a gift and all that kind of stuff. But just to give you an example, okay? But there's a lot of Black history out there that's not told. And you know what? Go to your family members. There's a lot of history there, especially the older people. There is so much history. And see, the thing is, our history for some is so painful that they don't want to tell. They want to keep it hush hush. There are a lot of Black families who go to their grave with history because it is too painful and they're ashamed of it and all of that. Try to get it out of them. Learn your history because it is so much there. It is so much history. But to continue on, oh yeah, don't forget my book, Power Thoughts, Empowering You to Be Successful in Life. And one of the things in there I do tell you is to know the history of your family, learn your family and what they are all about, because that helps you to understand who you are. Okay, your feelings about your past and your history and all of that. It's important to know who you are. Okay, but get my book, Power Thoughts, Empowering You to Be Successful in Life. You can get it at AandKproductions.com, AandKproductions.com, or you can just Google the book, Power Thoughts by Sylvia Hayes, and get that book. It is so important. You will love it. Okay, you will be inspired and you would want to share this book with everybody else. Okay, so let's go ahead and bring on my co-host so we can get on with this topic. Hey, Reggie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm feeling black and highly favored. That's a good feeling. Uh, and I'm feeling great on this as we continue to share the stories during Black History Month. I think Dr. Carter G. Woodson would be proud that we continue to share uplifting stories of Black people's accomplishments, actions, and efforts, even though they have been ignored by so many. So we definitely want everybody to like, share, and subscribe. Hit those thumb up buttons and hit that notification button so you get and know what's going on. Just like our history, you got to continue to share it because nobody's going to tell the story but you.
Right. Yeah, you are right. And there is so much history. And a lot of time people think, well, they're under the assumption that our history started in slavery, but it didn't start there. Our history long before that. I know they say the first slaves came here in 1619. They have a film out about that now, 1619 Project or something like that. I haven't seen it. It's saved, but I haven't got around to looking at it yet. But I am so eager to see it. It's been too busy. Bad to say. But the 1619 Project, you got to see it. From what I've seen so far, it's worth watching. It's very educational. Okay. And our history is long before that. We had kings and queens, in way back in Africa, and they would kidnap, black people and bring them here to enslave them. Princesses and princes were kidnapped and brought here. So we came from a tribe of wealth and knowledge and power, and for them to just put us down and say you're worth nothing but labor for us, less you worth three-fifths of a person, you're not worth anything. A dog get better treatment than some of the slaves did. So our history is long before what they say it is. Even in the Bible, we'll go to the Bible. You know what? The Bible, black
Let's look at that
Jesus,
book.
huh?
Let's look at that book.
Yeah. Okay. So I just wanted to point this out too. Um, they get angry about stuff like, for instance, Ariel on Little Mermaid, fictitious character. James Bond, fictitious character. Now, when they made them black, white people got mad. How can they do that? They were angry because they put a black Ariel in there, a black James Bond. They didn't like that at all. These are fictitious characters. But yet and still, when they picture Jesus, the Bible says Jesus had bronze skin and woolly hair. But every time you see Jesus on the pictures in the movies, he's white. The Bible says that Zipporah, Moses' wife, came from Ethiopia. But when you see her in the movies, she's white. The Bible says that Queen of Sheba was black as berry, the queen of Ethiopia. But when you see her in the movies, she's white. So we don't get mad when you take our biblical people and make them white. We don't raise all kinds of sin. So, and these people are real. Why do you get upset for these fictitious characters? Tell me that.
Well,
Yeah.
one thing, and I have to be kind of like, I forgot the brother. He says, until you understand white supremacy, well, nothing else makes sense. And we have to understand people. And one thing about history, Black History Month, and I have to go back to the root of it, Carter G. Woodson, uh, because in his conversations with white people at his time, when he was alive, they never brought up any contributions of Black people. And that can happen today. So we have to constantly remind America of the contributions of Black people. When you talked about the Statue of Liberty, the Statue of Liberty, uh, even though it was created 40 years after the Civil War, it was a token of, at first, to say uh, some type of honor towards the blacks that fought in the Civil War. Well, America couldn't deal with that. They said, okay, I mean, we don't mind getting the statue, but we don't want all that implications that we want to recognize Black people. So one of the biggest problems with America has been, how do you treat black people? Even prior to 1619, the 1619 project, there were people here, whether it be indigenous people, whatever, whatever. They show records of people here 13,000 years. You can go through the airport, Hartsfield Jackson Airport right now, and find coins that are 13,000 years old. Okay? Now,
Mm-hmm.
13,000 years is a long time to be on this soil and for people to come over and not even recognize that you're here. I often share the story because people say, well, drummer, that really doesn't matter who was here before. But if somebody went in your house and you was sleeping in your bed and you was cooking in your kitchen and they act like you don't even belong, they just took over. Now, you would call them an invader.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Most time you want to shoot them. But if they had superior weapons, it's not too much you can do. They come in your house and they will assume your role with everything. Even when you look at your religion, whatever practice you had, they assume that. They assume your gods, your deities, everything. They just took it. I always reminded of the comedian Paul Mooney said, white people take everything. He said, they're going to take Michael Jackson. And, at first, when I first heard it, I started laughing just like you. I said, man, white people not going to take Michael Jackson. They can't have Michael. He said, they'll take him. He said, they will take Michael Jackson, and 40 years from now, you will see a different Michael Jackson. It won't be like the first Michael Jackson that we saw on the Ed Sullivan show. And little do we know it, I was looking at a Michael Jackson biop, and guess what?
What?
It's a white man playing his part.
Really?
Make this up. So if this
Yeah.
can
And I
happen,
haven't seen it yet, but
if
dang.
this can happen, and we live in now, just imagine 40 years from now, and there'll be black people say, well, do you think Michael Jackson was black? If you can live another 60 years, I'll be 124. They said, that old man over there, he said Michael Jackson was black. Now, look, this is what has happened to history. We look at biblical characters and some of the things, we look at hidden secrets that are here. A lot of it is to move and motivate the wannabes, the Johnny come latelys, so they can appear to be.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So once you understand white supremacy, everything else will make sense. That's from Dr. Henry Clark. Nothing makes sense until you understand why they're doing it and why will they continue to do it.
Yeah. And you know what? I just discovered that Abraham Lincoln actually said that the white people were superior over the black people.
Oh yeah. So did
Yeah.
Kennedy.
Yeah. Kennedy said the same thing.
Oh yeah. Now we talk about dirty little secrets, and I know it's gonna hurt some black folks feel it. When I was growing up, I could go in people's houses. There was always some pictures on the wall. In
Uh-huh.
most homes in the South, they had a picture of Jesus, the white Jesus,
And
uh,
Kennedy.
Abraham Lincoln, and John F. Kennedy.
Yeah.
Now, Abraham Lincoln, there were some things, and not to say he was just, he spoke his mind. He said that, you know, you can't make this up. One time they asked him, they said, well, do you think the slaves should have housing? And kind of like a Donald Trump, he said, well, if you can put the horses and the cattle in a barn, I don't see why you can't put the slaves in quarters. It was nothing mentioned about them being human. His first thought was, well, if you can put the horses and the cattle in a barn, and this was considered a smart man, he was a lawyer, then I don't see why slaves should not be able to be in a covered area, no matter how small it is. And even when you look at John F. Kennedy, I know black folk get upset when you talk about them Kennedys.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if it wasn't for Khrushchev and Russia and television and when they were showing George and George Wallace. Man, you got to give George Wallace a thumb up, because if it wasn't for George Wallace and his behavior down in Alabama, the Black Civil Rights Movement wouldn't have had no gas on it. See, George Wallace was you was assured of a show, and that man gave you a show. See, Georgia was a little moderate, Mississippi they just kill you, but Alabama they had some standouts, and one of them was George Washington. And when Kennedy saw George Wallace down there doing all that stuff, segregation now and segregation forever, he stayed in the middle of the thing, and Khrushchev, who was over back then, it was the USSR. Remember that?
I don't remember that.
You remember back in the 60s, they didn't call themselves Russia. They was a US,
Yeah,
yeah, it
yeah,
was USSR. And
yeah.
Khrushchev was over the USSR. And he said, well, Kennedy, if you can't tell me how to treat my N words if I see what y'all doing to your N words down in Alabama. So that's why he sent his little brother, Robert Kennedy, down there to check things out. And they didn't like him. They were Yankees. They coming down south. They said, their boys trying to tell us what to do and how to do it. So yeah, but I'm not saying he wouldn't eventually sided with black people. But remember, it was Lyndon Johnson that signed the paperwork in 1964.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And then that was under pressure.
it was on Kennedy's death back in 1960.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So
yeah,
even though they shot him in Dallas in what, 62, 63,
yeah, somewhere back there.
he was motivated to sign the Voters' Rights Bill. So, there's a lot of stuff you got to look at. It gets deeper.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like Kennedy. The Kennedys, they were good for America. And Johnny F. Kennedy was kind of, if you had to put him in political perspective today, believe it or not, he was more like Reagan.
Mm.
Oh yeah.
More like Reagan.
Oh yeah. He was a moderate conservative Roman Catholic. Uh, he believed in a lot of, but at the same time, he had some views. He was born up there in Massachusetts. That's the racist place on the planet, Boston.
Mm.
Thing, Mississippi,
Yeah.
they didn't hang you. They just made you feel bad. You didn't want to go there.
Nope. But when they talk about Mississippi, at one time you'll be afraid to go to jail in Mississippi, even for a parking violation,
You can go
because you will hang
to Mississippi
yourself. Huh?
today. You'd be afraid to go to Mississippi, go to jail. I wouldn't go to jail in Mississippi today.
Yeah, because they'll say you committed suicide.
Oh yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and they be hanging themselves.
Oh
It
yeah.
ain't no way in the world you're gonna believe these people are hanging themselves over something minor. You
Like
know?
like I said, Mississippi was, when you look at all the states, Mississippi was a little different than Georgia. Georgia was a little different than Alabama. See, Georgia had some blatant racism. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Mississippi was just in your face.
Yeah,
Alabama just had some clowns. Whether you look at George Wallace, you look at the guy that was down there on the Edmonton Bridge, the sheriff that was beating heads and all this type of stuff. They just took it to you, and they didn't mind who saw it. See, in Georgia, once they saw and television came on board, white people started saying, you know what, we need to watch our behavior.
yeah.
So the
But you
world
know
can
what?
see.
Way back when they didn't care because they be taking pictures. Like, I don't use the word picnic anymore because I found out what picnic means. Pick a nigger, where they would pick a black person to hang for entertainment, during their gathering, and they would take pictures. People would chop out the thumb and keep it for a souvenir and take pictures of the different body parts and keeping it for a souvenir. That was horrible.
Thank God they didn't have TikTok and Facebook back then. When you think about it, these were these were socialized around the white people. It didn't leave
Mhm.
outside of America. See, we didn't find those pictures until 40, 50, 60 years later. Okay. See,
Yeah.
when television came on board, you was out there immediately. And so America had to regroup on how they did and treated black folk, even though they did act up, but it did slow them down. And a lot of stuff came into the spotlight, and the federal government had to revisit what they did back in 1865. They started sending federal troops down south. That's what Kennedy did.
Sent federal troops down south. But you
Well,
know
they
what?
didn't send the troops. He sent his brother was the attorney general. So see, in the South, you could not get justice on the state level. The governors had already told you what they was going to do. Carl Sanders, I think he was the governor in Georgia. See, you don't even hear his name. He was probably harder than Lester Maddox and what's the other and George Wallace. He was just an elite Southerner. And he said, well, we're not going to be beating our Negroes like they're doing in Alabama or killing them like they're doing in Mississippi. They just ignorant. They're just ignorant white people. We're a little bit better than that if it is what it is.
Yeah.
And we don't want Martin Luther King and none of them walking down Atlanta. Georgia is a state that had a whole lot that went on, but they ignored it because a lot of black folk had a little bit. They would give them a butter biscuit or some popcorn, and they'd just be like, well, everything's okay over here. We ain't got no problems in Georgia.
But you know what? When I came to Atlanta like 40-some years ago, I was actually afraid to go in Stone Mountain because of the Klans.
Well,
that was like Klan country.
Oh, stop. Well, you got to check that. That's the biggest piece of artwork on the planet.
Yeah.
But
I'm talking about just in the city itself. I was afraid to go in there. Because of them.
And that used to be a black city.
Oh, did it?
Town, oh, yeah. They ran them out. Check out the history of Stone Mountain. Now, I had to think about this. Deeply hidden secrets. And I know it hurts a lot of people's feelings. I had to jot them down. It doesn't matter, because sometimes people say, well, why do you have to talk about history, black history, and dig up the past? Well, the big thing is not digging up the past, is letting it be out, letting it be revealed. Because sometimes you ask yourself, what were black folk doing? Once they let them out, I had a conversation with a brother probably about 10 years ago. He said, man, what were black folk doing? Once they let them out of slavery, man, y'all was free. Okay?
No, they weren't.
Well, yeah. I mean, but he thought. He thought.
But you know what? Now, I found out, because, I'm a storyteller, right? So I went to Mississippi and I did my piece, Don't Take My Child, about, a child being sold away from the mother during the slave auction.
Mm-hmm.
And when I finished, this man got up and told about he saw people in slavery somewhere in Mississippi, and this was in the 60s. He said he was totally shocked because he thought slavery was over. This was in the 60s, and he saw that. And then I went to Alabama like 1980, and they were telling me back in the deep woods, because they got some uncultivated land back there, and they were telling me back in those deep woods there were some slaves back there. Well, and this was like 1980.
Whoa. Well, they got slaves today.
Yeah.
They changed it from what they call chattel slavery, because the 13th Amendment says, well, you can't put them in chains and you can't hold them. But the next thing became sharecropping or servitude. See, if I own the land in which you work on, and I own the means in which you make money and provide for your family, you still a slave. Well, now that ended, the last sharecropping, believe it or not, stopped in 1978.
Yep. I believe it.
Guess what they turned up after that?
Where?
Because you know who became president?
In 78?
Well, 1980. Who was president? Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan.
When Ronald Reagan came on board, guess what became the new? You had slavery, you had sharecropping, and in 1980, the prison industrial system evolved.
Yeah.
In the prison industrial system, you could work people like you wanted to work them for free. You know,
Yep.
they were in prison. They still do this today. They make the tags. They pick a lot of the stuff that you can't get nobody to do. The prisoners do it.
Yep. Yep. You do. And there was another story about slavery. This was after the emancipation and all that kind of stuff. This was in the uh, early 1900s. They were saying where this man had these people working his crops, and when they finished working in the day, he would lock them up in a cage, and they couldn't go anywhere.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, and then when the word got out and they were gonna investigate, when he found out the people were coming to check him out, he killed all those bodies and hid them. And that's kind of like the same way it was when they stopped the slave trade. No more importation of slaves. They were still doing it. And then if they were getting caught by the Coast Guard or whoever it was, they would dump the slaves off in the river so they
Right.
wouldn't have them.
Sound
No
like Jim
evidence.
Jones, don't it? Remember Jim Jones?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, see, when you look at this thing, it's bigger, it's wider, it's deeper, it gets crazier. You know, see, today, and one of the things outside of see, by the time we old and gray, 120 years old, the prison industrial system would no longer exist. But
Right.
they still would have some form of slavery. They call it trafficking, human trafficking. That's what they do today.
Oh
Right
yeah.
now, there are more people in bondage than ever before. Okay,
Yeah.
the clothes you wear, the hats, the shoes, everything, the weapons we get. Who you think going inside those dangerous mines that they can't get and pay nobody to go into? Who you think pulling the diamonds out of all these little mines? Who you think mining for gold? Everything we don't want to do or can't do or don't want to be a part of. Guess what? They got a slave to do it. Who you think when it comes down little girls, you know, they got little girls as young as 6, 7, 8 years old being used for sexual fantasies of some of these perverted people, actors, entertainers. They going down there catching them early. They say, you know, they went in one country, they said you couldn't catch a virgin that was under 9 or over 9 years old.
What?
Oh yeah, and not because they having sex with their peers, they having sex with grown men. This is what's going on in the planet. But anyway, taking us back to us, America. One of the reasons that our story has not been told, America's got shame, they got guilt, and they got jealousy, envy. I got to throw this on you. You know what they just sent up in space?
What?
You can't make this up.
What?
Black DNA.
Black DNA?
Yeah. The mission to go to Mars, guess what they're gonna be having to put on? Because see, melanin, you can't just go up in space and just be pale.
Hmm.
When you get outside, now I still don't think they went to the moon. Okay, a lot of us don't believe that. They was out in Las Vegas doing some stuff, but I ain't even go there. I don't want to bust people bubble because a lot of people think that I forgot. You know, they believe in NASA, and you can Google this today and find out the moon landing was a fake.
Oh,
Okay.
really?
Oh yeah. Well, but that ain't got nothing to do with Black history. But this does. You got to put melanin on your skin in order to survive the radiation out in space.
Hmm.
Oh yeah. You got
I didn't
to.
know that.
Oh, you got to rub it on, digest it. It ain't like sun. And it. This is stuff. This just shows we already out in space. Melanin, and then the cells from the lady, Miss Lackey.
Mm-hmm. Henrietta Lackey?
They already in space.
Oh, really?
Because they want to see what's the effect on human cells in space. When they send all these little probes and stuff up, they ain't just up there with nothing in them.
Yeah.
They're taking a piece of us. So that just shows you our value. Sometimes we don't understand our value because we've been hoodwinked, bamboozled, ran amok.
So
But
if they using her cells up there, is
for
her
research,
family getting paid for it now?
they're not getting paid. You got reparations yet?
No, but even her children sometimes were getting tested and they were getting their cells and they didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. They did not know. Y'all look it
Yeah,
up. Look it up. I think I got her name right, Henrietta
yeah,
Lackey.
it's a lackey. It'll make you
That
mad.
was,
It'll make you mad.
huh?
It will make
Yes,
you
it
mad.
will.
You know, when the brother a couple years ago, he said, "Man, I just can't understand, drummer, why black folk not moving ahead. You guys been free since 1865. My family came over in 1965, and we prospering." Well, I had to let him know some things. See, these are dirty little American secrets. You got to understand some things that were put in place, systematic programs that were put in place to retard the progress or the forward movement of black people. Not black and brown
Mm-hmm.
people. I'm talking about black people, indigenous people, slave people, people that were here. Well, one of those things was religion, like you said earlier. It had to be taught. See, you got to think. How did you learn about religion? Not us. But how did your great, 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 great grandmom learn about religion? She
Yeah.
learned about a religion from a slave master.
Yeah.
Until
Go ahead.
until Nat Turner came, and they were trying to kill him because he started reading the Bible. They not doing what they were telling them. Okay, the Bible is a powerful tool. The Bible, the Quran, all of them. But when used improperly, they can be detrimental to your growth. Just like cocaine. Cocaine is not a bad drug if used properly, or morphine. But when
Yeah.
used improperly, you can get addicted, and it'll get you going. But they use religion, education, because who taught you how to read? Who taught your great 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 grandmama how to read?
Your great 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 grandmama wasn't supposed to know how to read.
Well, if she learned how to read, who taught her?
Yeah.
The slave master. So when
Yeah.
he taught her how to read, he taught her what to do, and he taught her a particular reason for reading. The only way in reason she was allowed to read was, guess what?
To learn the Bible so they can be
No, no, not just that. But over that was so that she could use her skills, her intelligence for his forward movement. That's the only reason she was
Yeah.
allowed to read. It wasn't about
Yeah.
nothing else. And
Yeah,
then,
because with the Bible, they took out a lot of stuff because they thought that the black people were gonna read that and revolt on them.
oh yeah,
And
yo,
and thinking about religion, okay, so like Africa had their own religion, the
hmm
Indians had their own religion, but
hmm
it was the Portuguese and whoever else came in with this Christianity and forced it on them. The
we
Portuguese went to
invented.
Africa to teach them, so they could be more servitudes to them. They use that Christianity as a brainwashing tool.
Oh yeah,
And that's what I didn't understand. And you think about their Christianity. Now, the Ku Klux Klan is supposed to be a Christian organization.
they
Now,
are.
they burn the cross, okay? They burn people and they kill people. What
They
kind
are.
of religion is that? I thought Christianity is supposed to be loving,
hmm
and helping each other, but yet still, under their Christianity, under they burn people, they kill people,
Oh,
they drag them up and down the street, hanging
oh
them.
yeah, oh
And
yeah.
then look at the Roman Catholic. The
Mhm.
Catholic people, look what those priests be doing to those kids. And
Yeah,
those
and they do it all
and
in the name of
took the
God.
Indians. Yes, they took the Indians from their families,
hmm
they've been here for generations. They know how to live, they have their own God. Took the Indian children from their families, put them in these homes, cut their hair off, dressed them like Westerners,
hmm
and tell them you got to be a Christian, teaching them to be a Christian. And the same time, they beating these Indian children, they killing them, just abusing them big time in the name of Christianity. So what kind of Christianity and what kind of
Well,
God is this that they want you to serve?
titles don't mean anything. One of the things we have to understand or overstand here in America, what is, good used to mean bad, or bad can mean good. It's just a matter of what time it is and who feels it right. See, for one thing, and like I say, in order to understand white supremacy, in order to understand all this nonsense, you got to understand white supremacy. Dr. Henry Clark said that. He said, because see, we trying to think like rational people. We say, well, that doesn't make sense. If you spiritual a person, when they dropped the bomb, the two nuclear bombs the atomic bombs that they dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki,
Mm-hmm.
guess what? Guess what? Our president Harry S. Truman did. Guess what he did?
What?
He had a prayer meeting.
Okay.
Okay, now you got to
Dropping
understand.
the bomb and then having a prayer meeting.
He had a prayer meeting before he dropped the bomb. God bless America. Now think about this. Now that's now not just stay on religion for a while. Even when a crop failed, you know, and you probably seen it reading the book 12 years. What's that? 12 Years a Slave. You know, anytime they had a bad crop, you can't make this up. You have to feel sorry for white people. I do. They got a sickness. Some of them do, but it's going to take allowing people to see some of the bad side effects of not telling the truth, what it does to you. This white man, you know how he would go out to his field and he would think that black folk was causing the drought. Okay. Well,
Mm.
I mean, you got to think. Don't try to think about it. You got to understand one thing. Once you understand white supremacy, everything else makes sense. This white man sold all his crop because he said he sold all his slaves because he thought the slaves was killing the crop. Not because he just thought their presence was killing the crops. This is what these folk were doing. So he just got rid of all his slaves. And he killed some of them would kill them. They say, man, we got to make a sacrifice. We got to make a blood sacrifice. They took it back to what's the brother in the Bible, Abraham and Isaac.
Uh-huh.
They go before the slaves and they say, we got to make a sacrifice tonight. SMA, we got to take one of your firstborn and offer him for a sacrifice before God so the crops will grow. And they take a baby that they probably raped and sacrifice that baby so the crops will grow. So it's a lot of stuff, a lot of dirt, a lot of dirty little secrets. That's in one area. When you look at religion, you look at education, even the schools, the present day schools, even all the way up to HBCUs, it's only maybe one HBCU, historically black college, that was started by black folk for black folk.
Mm.
Only one.
Which one was that? Howard?
No, look up how. Don't even bring that name up. That was Morris Brown.
Morris Brown. Okay. I
You
was
know,
close.
oh yeah, it ain't that close. But these institutions were designed so that you could continue the cycle of white supremacy. Okay, so you
Yeah.
got education, religion. When it comes to land, when they, I just saw a thing where Whoopi Goldberg, she said her family got the 40 acres and a mule, and believe it or not, a lot of black families get the 40 acres and a mule.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now were they able to keep it? They had to go through different things in order to keep that land. There are black folk that had property because they might have had a child that was born to the slave master. So the slave master said, you know what, SMA, y'all can't have it, but I'm gonna give it to the child that he sired or raped and created. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of light-skinned black folks started getting property early, especially around the 1930s and all this type of stuff. But they found out the white people got jealous. Again, white guilt, white shame, and jealousy caused them to do what? Either burn down the property, come up with rules and regulations to take the property back. And that became property taxes. A lot of people couldn't read or write. They make them sign contracts and deals, so they took the property back. Now, believe it or not, there are black families, you can Google them, that still have are sitting on the 40 acres that they originally got.
Mm-hmm.
They're down in Alabama, they're down in Georgia, but the smarter states said, you know what, we're going to find a way to trick them out of the property. So laws and rules came up, Jim Crow laws, black codes. No other race of people that's come to America has had to deal with all five of those things at one
Yeah.
time. You
Yeah,
know,
you're right.
oh yeah, we deal with the racism. That's a little bit of thing. But the religion, the education, the money, the land, the property, business ownership, all this type of stuff, a lot of the inventions, people say, well, Johnny, you can't, you're not going to be able to get the money to get that idea funded. So what we got to do is put it in my name. It should be no black person with the last name Washington that's broke. And there's more black Washington people with it's more black folk broke with the last name Washington and
Mm,
Carver. What's
yeah.
his brother? The peanut guy.
George Washington Carver. To speak of him, did you know that he was castrated when he was somewhere between 7 and 9 years old?
So what
11?
we call white fear. Now think
Yeah.
about this. As much as that man did with a peanut, there should be a peanut company named Carver.
Yep. Yep.
Now I want you to think about it. Let it soak in.
Yep. It should. I mean, it should be a lot. Shoot,
That's what he did.
man, I wish he could have gotten reparation for what he had to go through. You know, they castrated him to keep him from having sex with the white man's children. I
Okay.
mean, he's a
Well,
little boy. What did he know about that?
well, you got a very perverted population of people. Now, you know what? Now, uh, it's sad. See, we have to understand the mental breakdown of white people. I mean, if you ever saw what's that movie, Birth of a Nation, the first one, the guy that started, he
Mm-hmm.
showed it in the White House. But anytime you want to gaslight something, all you got to do is whisper. I'm talking about look like everything is down, everything's calmed down. All you got to do is whisper into the ear of the white male. They coming to get the women. You said what? They coming to get the white woman. Anytime you say that, I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
When the black man came back from World War II, that was his first time in mass numbers going over and seeing white women in
Yeah.
Europe.
Have you ever heard of the law called Paramount Law?
Oh no, break it. Tell me.
Okay. The Paramount Law is the right to be first or ahead of all rights or claims of others. That
Mm,
means the white man, he
sound
can
like
go
white
in.
privilege.
Yeah, yeah, and it's called Paramount Law. Okay, I'll give you an example. Like in Florida, there is this black lady that was married to this man, but the doctor, a white doctor, would go to her house and have sex with her in front of her husband, or make her husband go away so he can have sex with her. And she actually bore a child with him. You know, the husband couldn't do anything. And this was in what, the 40s, I think, 1940s or somewhere like that. Um, somewhere back in there, but the husband couldn't do anything. The doctor would go in there and have sex with this woman whenever he wanted to. Paramount law. White men can go in and have sex with these black women anytime they want to. Nothing can be done about it. But then you let a black man look at a white woman, you're dead. I mean, look
Wow,
what they did to Emmett Till.
wow.
Yeah, and he didn't
Well,
do nothing.
they killed his daddy too.
They killed Emmett Till's dad.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know about that. I knew he was in jail, but I didn't know they
Oh
had
no,
killed him.
no. He died in a firing squad. Emmett
Oh,
Till never met his daddy. His daddy, I forgot what war that was because it had to be World War II. They shot him and three other black guys. They said they raped a white woman. You can't
mm,
make this up. Google Emmett Till's biological daddy. This is another little unknown truth because they're still trying to figure out did those people conspire because once they found out that Emmett Till's daddy had violated or was suspected of violating a white woman, did they take it personally on his son?
mm.
And that show hadn't even come out yet. They'll tell us they graduate. The lady, she's still alive. She living in Kentucky in a crazy house.
Oh, is she?
Yeah, I can't think of her name, but she's alive today.
What? Wait, talking about the lady who said that Emmett Till whistled at her or said
Yeah,
something to her?
yeah.
Yeah. What was that lady name?
I can't
Margaret,
think of her name. That looked like Catherine or
Martha,
somebody like that.
something, I think.
Yeah, but she's
I
alive.
don't.
And but you now think about this. When we look at hidden secrets, I know we look at those things, but I think about the land. Like they could just take your land. See, people say, well, they burnt some land, but that shouldn't have stopped y'all from getting ahead.
No, huh?
But
Really?
no, you got to snap out of it, and this is why we have to educate our, whether it be white America or people coming to America. When you go to Lake Lanier used to be a town called Oscarville. I mean, let me make sure. Oscarville, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
They had thousands of people. It was black. You talk about Black Wall Street. They had doctors, lawyers, dentists, all this folk up there. Probably a town of somewhere about 2, 3, 4,000 people. Okay. I think at their peak somewhere between 1912 and 1920, somebody decided they didn't want to see that town no more. It hurt people. It hurt white folks' feelings seeing that town. So what they did, they ran them out of town. If you know what is called Peachtree Industrial, that's what they call it today. We talk about Trail of Tears. They ran them from the top of where Lake Lanier is, all the way down to what we call modern day Chamblee, Georgia. Okay, and then they got them out of there. A couple of years later, the Army Corps of Engineers decided to flood that area, and that's where we got Lake Lanier. Now, they didn't even have the decency to tear down the houses.
The houses are still underwater.
Yeah, that's why you got people up there boating. Next thing you know, they get caught up on some fence wire, some barbed wire. They still had clothes on the line. You know what I'm saying? Food in the refrigerator, beds made, all this stuff was in these houses. And not just not Oscarville. There's a place in Alabama called Kowalski. They built 2 lakes over there. They just ran black folk up out of there. They just, Alabama is just ruthless. See, Georgia, they did do some paperwork, but in Alabama, man, they flooded that whole area, and they built a lake called Lake Martin. They said he named it after a little black man. They had the nerve to do that, and then it just don't stop down south. If you up north, what's that? Seneca Village. Okay, they couldn't put water on them, but they just turned that whole thing into what they call modern day Central Park.
Yeah.
That's what's up there now. They ran everybody up out of there. They beat them, hit them, kill them, threw them in the water. It ain't no telling what they did. And believe it, as far away as Oregon, Vanport, Oregon. You got to look this up. I didn't even know black folk were up in Oregon. Because I met a brother one time. He said Oregon is 99% white. And this been a couple of years ago, and I met some brothers since from Oregon. I said, what Oregon? Well, there was a town called Vanport. They flooded it.
Really?
Wiped it off the map. Something like 2, 3, 4,000 Negroes were left without a place to stay. And guess why they did it? You can't make this up. White fear, white jealousy, white inferiority complex. A lot of white people had gone to the military, and because of the prejudice of America, they didn't allow a lot of the blacks to go to the war until they started getting their ass whooped. Excuse me, until they started getting their behinds whooped. Then they said, we need we need, you can't make this up. They said, we need every able-bodied person. But until then, black folk were in Oregon. And people got upset because they were there. And they had property. They had ownership. So they flooded that town and they turned that into a lake, a resort. You can go up there today and ski and all kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And the only thing black folks doing is cooking and cleaning.
Yeah, and not only did they flood towns with water, but they burned a lot of places down too.
Yeah, well,
out of jealousy, because they put the black people in the spots. They didn't expect them to exceed like they were doing. And there's too much. We can't let those black folks make money like this and outdo us. They burn them down.
And you can't make this up. The floods. The reason they started flooding place, they told black folk they was Noah. They were doing just like in the days of Noah. They were flooding villages for 40 days and 40 nights, and they ran them out of town. But again, using religion during the 30s, during the 1920s and the 30s, to move and motivate black folk to do a certain way. And we had black folk that participated too. because they got a butter biscuit, a ham sandwich, or something like that, and if they got a little piece of money, if they got a little piece of money, a pat on the back, a rub on the forehead, they felt good. They felt they was doing the race a good thing. You know, they
Mm-hmm.
were taking one for the team. They figured that, hey, you know what? I'm gonna help my people by selling out.
Yeah.
And you think about the GI Bill. A lot of stuff happened. You people say, well, the GI Bill was the best thing that ever happened because after World War One, they made it part of what's the president Franklin Roosevelt. The reason they elected Franklin Roosevelt 3 times, he's been elected more than any other president in America.
Oh,
Three
really?
times. Oh, he would have got a fourth if he hadn't died.
Mm.
Okay, and it'd been a whole different thing. But Franklin Roosevelt, he didn't really, not to say he favored black folk, but he knew the conditions of black people because he had polio.
Mm.
He knew what it felt
Oh,
like
okay.
to be mistreated and all this type of stuff. Well, anyway, when he put the GI Bill out, Harry Truman said, "Black folk can't get all this."
Mm.
You know, so again, the GI Bill came out, and black folk couldn't get none of that. When affirmative action came out, people said, "Well, you know what? Too many black folk. We can have three, but we can't have four. We can tolerate what they call them magical Negroes." So
Yeah.
in a lot of places, magical Negroes was how many Negroes could white people tolerate in the office. So they said we can't have but two. We got 5,000 white people, we got two Negroes. And that was their idea of affirmative action. Then when they said, well, you know, we want a little bit more than that, you know, white people really took an offense. It became offensive for affirmative action, even though they once thought about it.
Yeah.
They didn't want to
And,
brought it
and
up.
you know, the foreigners, they can't understand why black people can't excel, you know, like they do. It's
And
because
they
all
ain't
the
had the
odds are
restriction.
against them. I
Oh, they
mean,
ain't had the restriction. They got these Johnny come latelys. I mean, I love people. Now, don't get me wrong. America, but see, America is like a bad child. See, if you ever seen the Wizard of Oz,
mm-hmm,
see the Wizard, I watch it over and over so I can understand.
bunches of times.
Oh yeah. See, America is like the Wizard of Oz. It's telling you all this great hope, all this stuff, and you find out that America's got problems. See, America doesn't want everybody else to know they got problems. Now we can see them now more than ever before. This is because of the television and the next best thing that ever hit the planet, the internet and social media. People are saying, man, America, you know, is it like you go in somebody's house and you say, man, they got got $1 million house, and you find them sitting on milk crates.
Mm.
Now, the mansion has let them down. You know, people are finding out what America is. I love America, but America is that. It's the $1 million house that looks good on the outside, and once you come in, they start whispering. See, at least with black folk, you get the real deal. They say, I'm gonna tell you something. Uh, I don't own nothing in here. The outside look hard. You know, you can go outside, you can look at a house and it look horrible. If you go in
Mm-hmm.
inside, they got enough food. They got somewhere to sit for you to sit. They got somewhere you sleep. Don't care how bad that house. I've been in some of the most jacked up cribs on the planet. But they were always, they said, man, you ain't got to stay at no hotel. I got a bed for you right here. Well, that's us. But America is saying, once you inside, you on your own.
Yeah. Yeah, it is like that, and that's bad too. And you know, this generational wealth thing, it's like
Mm,
they talk about generational. They don't understand why we don't have generational wealth, but
red line.
then they don't think about how they got the generational wealth off the free labor and how
Oh,
they
yeah.
cheated people and how they stole from people to get that wealth to
Oh, yeah.
pass along to the next
And
generation,
still stealing.
and still stealing.
You know,
Yep.
see, right now, uh, and I still believe that every black person should take out $1 million life insurance policy on anybody in your family less than 30 years old.
Less than 30 years old.
Oh, yeah. Especially black males. Take out a
Yeah, because
life
they're gonna
insurance.
kill them off.
Yeah, yeah. And see, the only way you can get America's attention, they got to pay a lot of money. You start putting all that money on black bodies, guess what? People gonna say, man, they'll make us an endangered species.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, see, only thing, one of the big things this country understands is money. See, one reason we can't get reparations because it's about money. See,
Yep.
they
And
got the
they
money.
want some too. You
Oh,
can't give these black people money without giving us some.
mhm.
And it was the same thing like they were giving all the farmers supposed to be getting help, right?
Oh,
All
yeah.
these white farmers was getting money. They left the black people out.
They
Then
gave
when
two
they
farmers.
decided to give the
You know,
black people some, white ones complaining is racism.
they call them handouts when black
Yeah,
folk got them, but
yeah.
it was
But
like,
they
well,
got way more
oh yes.
than the black
Well,
people got.
like I said, well, until you understand white supremacy, won't nothing else make sense. Okay, even with
Mm.
the handouts, the bailouts, and all this type stuff, we still have to look at ourselves as a people. We've accomplished a lot. I encourage everybody to share stories. You got people in your family that have made magnificent achievements in spite of all the odds. All of us. Not to belittle
Mm-hmm.
anybody's history or put anybody's history down, but if you can't understand or understand Black history in America and then around the globe, then you're gonna miss a whole lot. That's why so many people now are so indoctrinated into the culture. You can't forget about us. Every time you turn on something, they get mad if we don't dominate in something. They say, man, the All Star game wasn't nothing. Wasn't enough black folk dunking in something. I think a white guy won the slam dunk contest, and people were like, wow, man, we're so glad to get this white guy in there. He looked good. He did outslam a lot of the brothers, but his heroes are Jordan and all this type stuff. You see, so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we got a lot to be holding our heads up and take this time during Black History Month to share with your family, talk about some stuff about our people.
Yeah, because it's still a lot of painful stuff out there. Just to give you an example, did you know that down in the bayou they used to steal the black babies and use them for gator bait?
Oh yeah, and they talk about abortion. I don't
Yeah,
want to hear it.
yeah, for gator bait, and I couldn't believe
Oh
they actually take the baby, hold it over the water for the alligator to get it. Just for them to get the skin or something like that.
yeah,
That
oh
was
yeah.
horrible.
We got some sick people.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. And then when I went to Jamaica a few years ago, this man was telling me how the white man, they would bet among each other what the woman was carrying, whether she had a boy or a girl. And then they
Wow.
would take that woman, split her stomach open to see whether she had a girl or a
Oh
boy.
yeah. Well, you figure the first C sections were done on black women without any anesthesia or anything. Okay.
Yeah.
They did it. So a lot of things. Like I said, they sent in melanin in space. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, even back in the day, there's always been a high, uh, even though they didn't admit it, respect for black people. You know, they would take a black woman and have her breastfeed white babies.
Yes,
Okay.
because white people thought it was disgusting. You
Whoa,
know,
whoa,
and the
whoa,
black person, her baby had to starve. A lot of them lost their
whoa,
babies.
whoa. Trust me, Miss Ann, Miss Sally, up in the big house, the white woman says, I can't produce that good milk. They wanted that melanin back then. That's why we got a lot of good, what we call good white people, liberal white people, because they start being fed by as late as the 1960s. Black women were breastfeeding white babies.
Mm,
I
yeah.
want you to think, let that sit in. Now, they didn't want you putting your toe in the pool. They didn't want you sitting to them next to them in the counter. See, all this is about control. It's all about control. See, if you didn't want, uh, you wouldn't even have sex. Now, there's some white people that had sex with horses and goats and mules and pigs, but these white people were having sex with black women on a regular, consistent basis and having their kids breastfed black milk. And then now they're going to be using the melanin and the cells for Miss Lackey so they can go in space.
Mm.
Welcome to America.
Yeah, welcome to America. It is so much out there. It is so much. And, they don't want us to know our history.
Hmm.
What are they afraid of?
It's up to us. I mean, you know what? They could take Black history out of every school. If Black folk get too lazy that we don't talk about ourselves and let other people know who we are and don't let the news be the narrative, then shame on us.
Yeah, because it's a lot. I mean, like I said earlier, talk to your family members. Because I was talking to one a few years ago, and she was telling me about during the Civil War, how you would think all white people was gung ho for the Civil War, right?
No,
Go fight for the freedom for the right to keep their slaves. But there were actually some white people who did not want to fight, and there were men who were hid in the woods to
no.
keep from
Well,
being drafted.
well, and they
And
shot them. They was That's where the word deserters came from. Fearful white people that didn't want to fight on the Confederate nor the Union side. And you know what? I didn't know that until I saw a black guy. And at first I was upset. I was in Virginia, uh, and I saw a couple black people in the Civil War with the Confederate uniforms on.
uh-huh.
And my first thought, what these brothers do with this Confederate uniform on? They crazy. I was thinking, call them Uncle Toms, all this stuff. But the brother educated me. There were black folk that fought on the side of the Confederacy. This is why history has to be told correctly. When you see all those guys up there on Stone Mountain, you got to ask yourself what was going on. And when you start telling the story, a lot of these statues, a lot of these monuments, black folk were helping them fight because guess who the enemy was? The North. It's just like right now, if a war
The
broke
other
out,
white people. Yeah.
yeah, because it's just that's all you got to defend. So we get ignored. Like the only thing we were doing was picking cotton and in chains.
Yeah. Yeah. But what I was going to tell you about them hiding in the woods, this was a relative of mine was telling me how this lady she would have to go to the woods as a young girl had to go to the woods and take this man her food
Oh
because he
yeah,
was in hiding
well
to
go
keep
with
from
the
going to
wind.
the war, and he would rape her. She had
Oh,
children by this man.
okay.
You know, she taking food down there to him, and that's how you got some of these mixed babies from that side of the
Mm,
family.
okay.
Because the such slave was taking the food to the man that was in hiding to keep from going to the military.
Well,
You know,
you know what now, and I got to add this to the list. It's two movies that every black person should see during the month of February.
it's what now?
There's two movies that every
Oh,
black person should see in the month of February.
what two is
One
that?
is the original black and white Birth of a Nation, and number two is Gone with the Wind.
Mm.
Oh, and then I'm gonna throw this in there too because it was made in my hometown, The Biscuit Eater.
The biscuit eater.
Yeah. You can't make this. See, one thing white people would tell you their history, and you got to see us in their history. Okay, and don't get upset. You got to understand if you want to overcome certain things, you got to overstand some stuff. Like I say, the only way we can understand why the behavior here in America is so anti-black is understand white supremacy. And
Yeah.
those two movies, Birth of a Nation and Gone with the Wind. And both of them about 3 hours long. The best work, first time I talked to a white guy, he was like, "You seen the Birth of the Nation?" He was shocked. I said, "Man, I watch it 3 or 4 times a year."
Yeah. What I don't understand is they want to a lot of time they try to fix their hair like us. They get out there and tan so they can be the color of us.
Okay. Yeah.
They get the Botox in their lips and their hips so they can be like us.
Mm-hmm.
They try to dance like us. They take our music.
Mm-hmm.
They work us like a Hebrew
Well,
slave,
well,
so they can make
I gotta
money,
tell
but
you
yet
this.
and still they hate us.
Well, they don't hate us. There's a
They,
story that's in all the biblical books about a deceiver that wanted to be like his creator. We call him
mm,
Satan, Beelzebub, the devil. They say God personally, like whether you look at is being allegory or whatever. God personally took his foot and put it in this individual behind and kicked him down here. Okay? But that individual still wants to be like what? The Most High. So it's
Yeah.
the same thing. If you look up, and that story is not just a story unique to this place. If you look at Kemet Creek, different countries, what we call modern day Africa, there are stories of individuals seeking to be the godlike individual. And once black
Mm-hmm.
folk understand that we are that godlike individual, I mean, nobody's trying to take, I'm trying to think, white pigmentation and take it up to space to protect themselves. So you can't enter space without melanin.
Right.
So that disqualifies your heaven. So that tells you not to be racial or anything. That tells you your choice is very limited unless you get some melanin.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can
Yep.
enter hell without melanin.
Yep. Yep. That's true. That's true. Maybe they'll learn. They'll learn to appreciate us.
Well,
Yeah.
it ain't about us. It's about them.
Yeah. Yeah. It is about them. But it is time for us to go. So I just got to say, there's a lot of history about Black people that needs to be told. Family members teach your history. There's so much in the family that you can teach. So much. I mean, something, and it's not told, it's not in the books, and they don't want you to know your history. I mean, just to give you an example, John Hanson, he was a Moor, first black president of the United States. Of course, they say George Washington Carver was the first was the first president, but actually John Hanson was the first president, okay, of the United States. And while we're talking about this George Washington thing, did you know that he had over 300 slaves and that he took teeth out of his slaves to make himself a plate so he could eat? He had slave teeth in his mouth. No, George Washington. Okay, so you think about that. That's history that they're not telling you. Also, like in the Bible, I'm trying to think of the name. Uh, anyway, history, life started in Africa. Okay, in case you didn't know that life started in Africa. The name of the city, I can't think of it, but it means Garden of Eden, and that's where life started. Okay, Cush. When you hear Cush, when you see Cush in the Bible, Cush is Africa. Okay, the land of Cush, that's the land of Africa. So we have a lot to be proud of, and it's a lot that's not being told. Learn your history. Learn your history because it is so important. Don't let people say you're not worth anything, you don't have any value, you don't have any history. We go all the way back to the beginning of time. Okay, so learn your history and don't let February be the only month you learn history. You do it throughout the year because they're trying to keep you from knowing what you're bound to be proud of. Okay, so until then, I'm going to say, y'all be good, learn your history, and we're going to see you the next time. Have a good one.